just make sure I have the traits page open too.
Where? All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's get
Yep,
started. So we're going to be going
I'm good.
through Inkborn Fables, trying to give ourselves a high level view of how things are going to be. We're going to in this first video we're going to be looking at the traits and just sort of trying to get an overall flavor of the set. So let's start with Altruist. I won't go into detail about what each of these things are. They'll be on the screen, and I'll try and do my best to remember to keep those up on the screen. But Altruist kind of have got the built-in Gunblade and also give the team armor and magic resist. So Protroid, I think you count out was around 4 different defensive traits in the set, or 4 sort of more serious defensive traits.
I think so. I'm gonna double check it really quickly through the classes as well. Just because like Bruiser and Altruist are both very heavily defensive, but they're in that kind of different bucket. But I believe it's Altruist, Warden, Bruiser, and as you were kind of talking about, there's a slight distinction, I guess, that you could say between how you decide to build Fated, but that also kind of varies too.
Okay, yeah. So Fate is kind of like a sort of defensive trait, can be.
Question mark. Yeah.
So in terms of the composition of this, so you've got it's a two and 3 cost. The Riven's pretty easy to access, but you don't get the benefit of this until you get the Soraka online. So if you're gonna make use of this at all, I think the thing which I found from like a little bit of playtesting was it felt like because you've got the Bruiser from Riven, that the Bruiser and Altruist in general with because Bruiser's got a lot of health, this gives low level defensive stats. That this seems like it might be intended for use with Bruisers.
Possibly. I'll say the thing that is sort of tricky for me to still get my head around though is that we can focus on the armor and mattresses, which is just going to be useful at the end of the day. But Altruist also has the fact that it heals the lowest health ally based on the damage that Altruists deal, and that's really good. Don't get me wrong, but it also is heavily variant on what the meta is. Like, if we see a patch where Kha'Zix reroll is huge, right? And like in the early game, you just have a Kha'Zix jumping onto your backline a bunch, or Yone is doing the same thing with the spirit form. Like
Hmm.
that will probably buff up Altruists quite a bit because your backline gets armor and magic resist. Your backline is also going to get a little bit automatic of healing based on the damage that Riven, Soraka, or later the Rakan can do. And I think Soraka's also pretty decently built to be that support in the first place. So all that adds up to being something pretty neat. It just is going to be very meta dependent, in my opinion.
I'm trying to find. Okay, it looks like Meta TFT doesn't have the what which I wanted, which was the ability to mouse over and see what the traits actually do.
I have the list open on Mobalytics right now if you want that.
Okay.
Let me
Yeah, because we
just
don't
look at
have the ability, so it's worth mentioning what they are. So for Riven, it's kind of what you'd expect that she casts repeatedly, and then gets a pretty small shield at the end of it. Like, it doesn't look like she's intended to be able to kind of tank from that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Uh,
meanwhile, Soraka, though, first and foremost, we have congratulations, return of the ranged AoE mana reave. You loved it in set 3.5, and now it's back here for Inkborn Fables. But regardless of that, too, she also has this secondary passive of whenever your team loses 20% HP, she gains ability power, which I feel like can also serve as a pretty exciting just generally way to sort of further stack up these abilities, both through Altruists and her other trait being Heavenly.
hmm. It's because I think for most of the game, it's going to be Riven and Soraka who are this trait.
Mm.
Like, it's only at the very tail end of the game that Rakan could even conceivably come in. So
Yeah, I don't really think that's a bad thing per se. Like this is like Mystics, right? Like you're just gonna be slotting a few of these in here and there to get a little bit of support. And they splash fairly nicely, maybe Riven a little bit better than Soraka, but that's only because I know that there's not going to be too many situations where bruisers aren't easy to fit into a comp. It's going to be more interesting to see how much people prioritize Heavenly, which I can tell you I'm very excited for, but I'm not quite sure what the overall read of the meta is going to be.
Hmm. Um, but yeah, well, I suppose it's a bit of a weird combination of things, isn't it? That we've got Riven, who's very much a damage dealer, and Soraka, who by having the silence means that she's somewhat indexed towards providing support. Um,
Mm.
and you mentioned the heavenly stuff in there as well. Like both of these seem to be linked to re-rolling, at least partially. If you're not just using them as trait bots, that is.
Yeah. I think I have seen some people to mix success on the PB reroll Soraka. That being said, like both as part of Heavenly and also use her as a carry. But that being said, it's PB, all this kind of stuff can shift around pretty heavily. I am sure at some point during the life cycle of Inkborn Fables, we're gonna see a patch where Soraka's overtuned and she becomes this all or nothing damage utility unit, which always seems to be the bane of the TFT design team's existence.
Mm.
But again, we'll see how that kind of goes as we get deeper and deeper into these patches, as opposed to the theoreticals.
Rakan is the does a small amount of damage in an AoE and shields himself, reduces opponent's damage. So it does seem like, at least from Soraka and Rakan, it's more utility than anything else. I guess that makes
Yeah.
sense with a trait that's. It's kind of weird, actually. I suppose that's the thing that's like seems a little strange about me, because like sure, defensive stats across the team, that makes sense. We're support units, but having the altruists heal based on the damage they deal when they're not really seemingly spec'd for dealing damage seems odd to me.
There is actually one thing I'm very curious about, and I haven't tested this myself on PB, so I don't know. But I believe because Zaya and Rakan are one unit this set, right? Like if you put
Yes,
them in the front line, they're Rakan. If you put them in the back line, it's
it's the
Zaya.
transforming. Also,
Exactly. Like same Jason on steroids from the set six. If you have your Sirach, if you have Rakan in, you're activating Altruist. I believe, based on the way that this is all written, that the feathers that Zaya's throwing out from the sideline should count as healing for the altruist trait.
I
And from
assume
there
so.
too, the reason why I think this is because there is a specific note in Rakan's tooltip when Zaya is the carry that says that his feathers that he launches out feathers that heal if he's on the sidelines. They benefit from trick shot as a trait, which we'll talk about later, and so you can get some more AOE team healing. I think the specifics about say which is better can be devoted to again a deeper dive on Zion Rakan as a couple as a whole, and I'm sure we'll do that when we talk about more of the specific units. But I would imagine that's how Ultras works, but still, we're in the scenario of, well, geez, how much damage are you really doing in a lot of these cases?
Yeah, it's. I guess the final thing there is like, because it's only really two units for the most part. You have to be playing. You have to be running a composition that can make use of Heavenly, Storyweaver, or Bruiser, and ideally two of those for this
Mm.
to be a trait you want to play. And that feels a little weird again for a trait that sort of reads like something that was intended to be splashable, but maybe it's actually not.
I mean,
Um,
I- I'll say at the very least, like, there is natural synergy within Storyweaver, and we'll talk about them later too, that help trying to get Altruist in here, where you already have natural bruisers coming in through the Galio later on, so you're going to get that for free by just going into the vertical. And then it becomes a conversation of, well, geez, where are all these threats coming against me, right? Like if they're backline threats, maybe Ultras goes in so that way I can give them a little bit more armor and MR and they can heal up a bit. But if they're frontline threats, maybe this is something I leave off to the side and then instead try to go 4 bruisers instead of 2. So I am not quite sure, but all that kind of comes down to that whole board crafting sort of aspect of TFT that sometimes you just have to be playing the game as opposed to talking about it to really get into the weeds of.
yeah, it'll be interesting. Like, I do wonder if maybe 10 armor and magic resist just isn't enough to actually make a difference, and it's kind of just there for very specific circumstances.
I mean, what is that? Is that a that's like a belt, not belt and cloak, but like that's cloak and vest, right? Just the component.
I think so, maybe.
Maybe a little less if I had to guess, but yeah.
I can't imagine that it's something you're going to be wanting to give up 2 slots to play unless you are using those units.
Yeah, I think that sounds fair.
Okay, so on to Dragon Lord. So that's, yeah, 2 to 5, and you've got the individual steps, same as Altruist. This one definitely feels like, and has been explicitly stated to be, this is the sort of the splash utility trait.
Yeah, this is basically Freljord again, right? Where it's has the stun at the later levels. It buffs your units up a little bit and does damage. Actually, no, I think the unit buff might only be off of an augment, excuse me. So it's pretty much that quintessential, if you can splash it in, cool. But I don't really think there's too many worlds where you go deep into this vertical in order to get it going. Like, really, this is just, hey, you're running Lee Sin in a duelist composition. Do you want a little bit of extra utility to make sure that he can stay alive a little bit longer? Cool, let's throw in a Diana or a Janna just to sort of give you that survivability.
I was just double checking because looking at the tags on Janna and Diana, yeah, you've got Invoker and Sage, which I'm assuming, I was just double checking to make sure I'm not like misstating this. I know that like Sage has a little bit of utility for like non AP units, but
Yeah, Sage is Omnivamp in the front line, and in the back line, you gain AP.
yeah, so you've got Invoker and Sage as like the two most obvious ways or easy ways to access that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, like, yeah, realistically, you're looking at it being two very AP focused units, and there's one duelist in there who presumably could work with Sage to give your melee units a little bit of Omnivamp.
Yeah. But again, I feel like at that point we're trying to, I mean, rightfully so too, right? Like we're trying to go deep into like the additional ways that this can play on through. When in reality, I think maybe just having the, and hold on, I just want to make sure I have the numbers ahead of me before I say anything too crazy. But I think just having the bonus attack speed and just a little bit of extra damage on top of that, I think that's enough for a unit like Lee Sin, right? Like he really just wants the attack speed to keep kicking.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious to see like how widely it gets played outside of the AP comps.
Yeah. The only other thing that I think I'll mention here is that the emblem is not craftable, but you can find it off of things like Tome of Traits.
Hmm.
And with the loot rebalance, it should be slightly easier to find them. And you also see some +1 traits returning. I don't know if this is
It
one of
is
them.
you can get the emblem
You
as
can get +1. Okay.
yeah.
So all that does kind of work in its favor as well to make it the, as we said, like this is probably the the splashiest trait that you can kind of see. That just makes it easier to do so.
Okay. I think this is fine. Like this level of like very surface level stuff is fine for a first go through.
Yeah.
So Dryad stuff is it's selfish health scaling that gives you permanent health. Oh,
Ev- yeah. Everything I'm excited about for Dryad is more in the units than the trait itself. Like the stacking HP is really cool. The bonus AP is really useful for pretty much everyone in here actually, because I think all these units scale with AP to a certain degree. Gnar may be slightly deceptively so, but we can talk about that now or talk about that with the units. But I am much more excited about the ability to reroll this trait, say with Gnar and Kindred, and
hmm.
to be able to pivot away from it should the reroll not quite work out, than I am to specifically say, hooray, I'm playing Dryad, where maybe if you get the emblem, I'm a little bit more excited because then I get another bruiser with Triad active too, right?
Yeah, there is a augment that's specific for it, which just gives all of your Dryads 10% extra damage and a couple
I
of
think it
extra stacks.
also, yeah, it gives them 2 stacks every single round. So that adds up pretty dang quickly.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess it's kind of interesting, like that you've got a reroll oriented thing with a scaling. I guess we're kind of in punk area here, really, aren't we? Like,
But
we've
yeah,
got yeah, Rek'Sai, Gnar, and Kindred all very low cost. Presumably, if you want to play this in a serious way, you need them to be 3-star.
furthermore, too, it's really important to note that, like Punk, right, the HP is stored on the trait itself, so it's not like it's stacking on the unit specifically, like Kabuko, whenever we'll talk about him. So you can stack HP the entire game and then just find an early Ornn at like level 6, or you just get really unlucky and you don't find him until level 8. As soon as you slot him in, he's going to gain the bonus HP from all the stacks you've already gotten, right?
Mm.
So that also further helps it too, because again, all of these units are designed to synergize with having a large amount of HP. So that works out pretty dang easily from my perspective. And again, I would love to steal this away and just talk about how Gnar and Kindred reroll together so effectively and how some of these other units play with Dryad, but we can talk about that another time unless you want to give me the floor for like 5 minutes, you know?
No, like I think that's something to come back to another time. But yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you'd want to play. If I don't know if you'd ever want to play Dryad if you weren't playing it from the beginning of the game. Oh.
Yeah.
Also, it feels like you need to be playing a relatively strong board as well because you're only getting these stacks from actually killing stuff. So if you're getting run over when you're trying to run Dryad, then you're literally not scaling it at all.
Yeah, it's tricky, tricky, tricky at the end of the day. So, I mean, fortunately for you though, I mean, it should be fairly easy to find them because there's a lot of augments that can just drop you a random kindred, so that could be pretty useful. Or you
Mm.
could just again find it like you're talking about a 1 cost in the form of Rek'Sai and 2 2 costs. So that also kind of helps balance things out. That's something you can conceivably see someone finding before stage 2.
All right, cool. So Fated is probably one of the more confusing ones. That
Yes,
I don't know if unfortunately I haven't been able to find an easily accessible version of what all the Fated bonuses are. I'm
I
sure I
have
saw one earlier.
access to them. Yeah, I'm looking at them right now, though I'm juggling between like 5 or 6 web pages to do so.
Mm.
But we can just give the high level stuff and then talk about some of the more interesting combinations, I guess.
Okay, yes. Well, I suppose we run through it really quickly. So a lot of them seem to just be straight stats. So Ari's AP, Yasuo is a shield, Kindred is attack speed, attack damage for Aphelios, armor and magic resist for Thresh, uh, straight damage buff for Syndra, and for Set, who I think comes into a lot of different comps, has
Omnivamp.
Omnivamp. Yeah, and you choose two of those that you want to have active. So as you said before, it could be oriented defensively or offensively. The and the two units you choose both get a small amount of bonus health.
Yeah, like I think the way that I've seen it is that Thresh and Yasuo are a really nice early to mid game kind of option, especially if you can combine that early Thresh, because all your faded units gain a shield, all of them gain armor and MR. Cool. Like
Hmm.
you're not gonna find a better front line, I feel like, than that at some of those early levels. In the late game, I've also been interested because Syndra and Ahri have overlap with Arcanist as well, so you just automatically gain Arcanist for free by playing the vertical. Their benefits also synergize very nicely with Ahri giving straight AP and Syndra just giving you surprise a bunch of damage. So it really does work in that regard too. It also opens you up to try a few other interesting things as well. Like I could see a world where Felios and Kindred or Aphelios and Syndra work too, where Kindred gives Felios attack speed or Syndra gives the bonus damage in general to the Aphelios. And then meanwhile, as you were getting at a little bit before, Set just is a incredibly flexible unit. So being able to work around that is just going to be useful.
I think you're right though. This kind of reminds me a little bit of. I think last time we did this, Left had some really good insights in this kind of respect, where it's like, yeah, it feels like Fated is intended to be exactly as you said those units early on because it gives you the 20% health, and if you don't have that on frontliners, you're missing out on some of the power of the trait, and then later on you swap it in for whatever you happen to be missing.
Yeah, I'm still not. I need to experiment with this more because I'm still not sure how sold I am of going too deep up the vertical. But I can see, at least for the offensive side of it, where if you're really just playing Ari and Syndra, you might be better suited going to Arcanist. But for the defensive side, I definitely see a world where you just throw in a couple more and you just try to play around that aspect.
Because the way the trait works is the I'll just pull up on the screen a little bit bigger there. The if you go to 5 or 7, then your whole team is getting the bonus. So if they're not all benefiting significantly from that bonus, like I can't imagine like a damage buff is gonna be. I mean, yeah, it benefits your front line. Hmm. I
Not
don't know.
bad. Like, again, I don't see it as a huge frontline thing, but also, like it also depends on the level of play that you're at, where sometimes people just struggle to put together strong early game boards, and just giving yourself a bit of extra damage here or there, or that shield from the Yasuo, like playing early Yasuo Ari Kindred, where Yasuo and Ari are your fated pair. I could see a world where that gets a few more stage 2 wins than you might expect, just because people might be still struggling to build a board on their side.
I noticed it's got the dual Arcanist uh, in there as well with the
Hmm.
threat with sort of Ari and Syndra, and also that the trait sort of web for Fated is very offensively done early on. You know, Arcanist, Duelist, Reaper, Sniper, like they're all different varieties of offensive trait until you get fairly deep into Fated.
Yeah. And I feel like that also is designed to sort of counterbalance some of the stronger aspects of the defensive traits. Like, say, for example, just for Fresh, let me actually find the exact numbers. And granted, again, these can all change, but Fresh is giving everyone 25 armor and MR. That's pretty dang powerful. And
Yeah,
if you had easy access to that in the early game across 2 units, let alone five, it would be very game warping, I would say.
yeah. I guess that's another thing that's kind of interesting about it. And so, also, welcome, Z-Boy. Uh,
Hello.
Hello.
is that these are sort of flat bonuses, like they're not like percentage bonuses. Like you mentioned, like it's a flat bonus for Thresh. It's a flat bonus for I think all of them. Yeah, they're flat shields,
Yes.
flat bonuses. So if you don't go deep into it, then presumably you have to at some point drop the cheaper fated units out for more expensive ones, or the bonus will not scale at all.
And to be clear, as you're kind of getting at too, being able to put in the 5 piece or the 7 piece, that's where the faded benefits are starting to scale up a bit more, right? So there is still that kind of room per se, but it varies. It varies.
I will screen share what I'm looking at just so make life a little bit easier for the folks who are coming in.
Yep, yep.
There's a link in general to the sheet we're using as well.
Yeah, I was actually looking at the sheet as you were going through it.
Cool.
I was I was on top.
Well, I guess probably what we'll do if with more people turning up now is if you drop a dot into the chat if you've got anything which you want to add. Otherwise, we'll just keep banging through these because I'm aware that it's really easy to get bogged down in
Mhm.
high level stuff. Okay, Fortune.
Did you just break counterfeit? Like, are you okay?
That's the sound I make when I'm scrolling down a page.
Oh, I wasn't sure if this tiny little penguin just sort of did like a neck chop or something and took you out. Um,
Yeah.
but
So
A
Fortune's.
tiny penguin.
I mean,
yeah, Feather
it's
Knight,
not
you know.
unreasonable to think that. So Fortune is it's kind of weird. It feels a little bit regressive, honestly, from some of the economy traits from before. That
Agreed.
it's just like it's just like you just sit there and don't play the game for a while, I guess.
I mean, it's basically saying, hey, we think Fortune may have gone too far in its initial iteration, and we've learned a lot about how economic traits work since then, so we want to apply some of those learnings to Fortune. Excuse me, to Fortune. But it feels a bit awkward to play in spaces because of the dice roll mechanic, because you don't always have a direct kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Mm.
kind of that Jin esque of these are the cycles that I can play to cash out.
Yeah. It's also like, especially with headliners gone, it's quite tricky to get fortune in from early on. Like that, you have to have a 3 cost in place, and the 2 cost as well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that surprises me a little bit more, just because, as folks I'm sure have noticed, because I think I've seen it the most on all TFT aligned social media about Fortune, or just people chatting about it in study groups, is that it takes so much to get Fortune online in the first place. And then when it is online, if you ever misjudge anything and you win a fight, you lose most of everything, right? Like we're talking about 33 to 50% of your acquired stacks or something like that, if memory serves.
I think they changed that. I was
Yeah.
looking at it on PvE recently, and it's a lot more forgiving now. It's
Okay,
like 10,
that's good.
I think it was like 10% now.
It was 5, and then I think they might have touched it in the most recent patch, but
Oh, I'm pulling up the tweet.
yeah, it used to be like 20, and it was unplayable. And I think this is one of those that they've messed with so much on the PvE that it's going to take a long time for people to figure out if it's worth playing, right? Like and to optimize it. Like we saw, we see the challenge at high elo, right, is that these econ traits get optimized and then become super dominant. And people have, it's just been unclickable for so long that people haven't really figured out how to, if you can play it, and if so, how.
They were kind of explicit with saying they didn't want it to be like the viable method of like playing the game, to be like a mainstream way of playing the game.
Right.
And to be fair, like you can end up very easily in a situation as we saw originally for Fortune, right? Where it can be very feast or famine. It feels very hard to engage with because the way you engage with it is sacking your own board to upset someone. And that it's very rare to kind of find a player willing to take that kind of sacrifice and to completely throw perhaps their entire strategy off to throw off someone who really just needs to lose streak.
I think maybe it's intended for people who find a fortune emblem early from augments and be like, okay, if I happen to high roll that, then I can more reasonably set up for 5 fortune and then just treat it more like Heartsteel would have been in the previous step with a metabolic.
Maybe. Oh, really quickly, I did look it up. It looks like it's going to hit the live servers with a 10% win penalty.
Okay, it is 10%.
Yeah, it was increased from 5 to 10 in the most recent patch.
So it's not like it doesn't destroy you then.
Yeah. And also to be clear too, like I think another commentator, Quinn, was asking questions about this in because they're here but they're muted, so I'll just kind of say it out loud. The dice roll mechanic I feel like is also just a lot for folks to kind of get their heads around, even though at the end of the day I think it will sort of come around as a little bit more basic, where you're just rolling to see when this cash out option is going to be. And in theory, I like the idea of like saying, ooh, do you want to press your luck? But oh no, can you really run the gambit of losing another 6 times we're having the option to cash out again? But that also we're talking about more reduced player agency just over in and of itself.
In terms of tags, I would say that like Kabuko as a unit is pretty forgivable to be putting in for for the early going. Like I don't think people are too upset about having him in and then just seeing if it plays out later on that you've got the scaling from the beginning of the game and you can always use him in some other composition or just ditch him after a certain point.
I mean, infinitely stacking HP on a bruiser is a hell of a drug, right? So I can see
He falls off.
That works.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
Is he's like with his ability, he has a slow like attack animation with it because he like stops once he hits full mana and gets mana locked, and then punches. So with how some of these later game units work in this set, specifically like the Syndras and like a lot of the 4 costs, like they're doing things fast. Like Morgana's casting fast, Annie's even casting fast as a frontliner. Syndra casts fast, Kai'Sa casts fairly fast. So we're not like mana locked in this set like we have been with previous 4 costs in other sets, which I find really interesting. Like blue buff is a lot better in this set
Oh,
for
yeah.
that reason as well.
Okay. Yeah.
I want
that's
to talk a lot
interesting.
about blue buff later, but not right now.
Yeah. Just something that came to mind for me that
In
I've
terms
seen
of-
with my Kobiko.
with maybe with Fortune being less punishing for wins, then like that it's more believable that someone might actually try and include it in a composition as a kind of throw-in. But I don't know, like Trick Shot and Duelist, I can't imagine would play amazingly well together as being like two quite separate offensive traits. So you'd.
I mean, with Emblem, right? Like
Yeah.
Trick Shot, Trist could be fine, right? But yeah, it's not like the trait web is bad. The rewards so far have not been worth it. Like it feels like I've had fortune openers and just been like, I don't want to do this. Like there's no, they like almost any other thing I can do is going to be better than this, right?
The one thing I'm interested in, though, and it might just come down to unit power, and it's really hard with the web still, is the fact that if you throw in the 5-piece, you gain +2 HP every round, which
I think, yeah.
that sounds exciting to me. Oh, sorry, did something happen to that?
Oh no, I
Mm.
feel like they might have increased that. I know the last time, the only time really I've played Fortune, it was bugged, and so I was
It's
not.
hard to kind of gauge, yeah.
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 But because I was like playing around that, and I think that is something that I mean, obviously you're supposed to play around it. It's in the trait, but you know, yeah. Again, it goes back to the optimization things. So many things with it have been off, right? Like the payouts have been bad, or certain things have been bugged with it that you can't really get a clear picture of what this is actually going to be, if anything, at this juncture. It feels like.
And it's +3 now, by the way. I just looked to see what the
Mhm.
number is when hitting. Yeah, it's now +3 on the live. It should be +3 going to the live servers. Sorry.
Okay, well that's interesting. Like, it's weird for TFT to have a thing which seems to be like literally just there to please the players who want to be more gambling, but to have that not be something that that would reasonably lead to a consistent winning or even semi-consistent winning just feels odd.
Yeah.
I think all the units on their own are kind of like when Heartsteel first came out. Like I think we need some buffs to make this a viable, as you said, like in your notes, watch for changes because they'll definitely tune it up to give it more playability. But I think on launch, it's just more of a high roll trait than anything. Like you
Yeah.
need that emblem to really want to go forth with it and push forward outside of just probably your first stage if you hit it early.
Go forth and go forth.
Yes. Well, Ghostly's a little bit more to say there because there's a lot more units, and it feels like that's presumably going to be a much more seen trait. That's the. I think I was a little confused that the ghosts are a. What's the right word for it? A debuff, like, or damage amplifier, I guess is a better way of putting it. That passes around the place. So kind of like a reverse Dark Star. There's always some sort of Dark Star version in the set. Yeah, I know. So you got the max health shield. Max health regen, and a reasonable. You got Behemoth and Warden. I think this. Wait, this doesn't look like it's. Yeah, sorry, my notes here look like they're missing some of the units.
Hold on. I'm looking at things in the team planner in client right now.
Yeah, if you're
Those
using,
are
yeah, you're
accurate.
using my cheat sheet.
I think maybe
some of the stuff didn't quite copyright, I think, or I was just being a dingus. But so if there's problems, Mobby.
That's right.
I think it's 5. Yeah, I was like, I think there's only 5 of them.
Yeah, Alawi, Morgana, Kayn,
No,
Caitlyn,
there's
and
6 of them.
Is there a 6th?
Aatrox. Oh, wait, oh yeah,
I thought you
Shen.
needed emblem. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
Shen was on there. I thought.
Oh, so the 6 that there are Alawi, Morgana, Kayn,
Mhm.
Caitlyn, Aatrox, and Shen.
Oh, it's Aatrox
Yeah,
that we're
there's no
missing.
Aatrox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Right. Yes, Aatrox is not in the.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
So I thought you needed Emblem to hit 6, but now that makes sense.
Okay, yes. So in that case, then you've got a good amount of defensive traits. So Bruiser, Behemoth, Warden, like relatively early on in the trait tree, and the percentage max health heal is a constant. It's not dependent on the trait level. I don't know. How do you guys feel about it in general?
I think it's very good. I think it's an easy trait to hit because it only takes 2. And you can start early on with like a Caitlyn and a Shen or a Caitlyn and an Aatrox to turn it on. And it allows you to have a kind of early game power spike when you have this trait in.
There's also this AD versus AP choose your own adventure, where I don't see a world where Morgana's ever a mainline carry, but I believe each tick of her ability counts as a damage thing for the ghosts that come out, if memory
That's a good
serves.
question.
So as a result of that, like,
Hello?
it will be
Oh,
very
there we
easy
go.
for her to stack things up. Oh, there you're Quinn.
Hello.
Sorry, I was trying to say this whole time, Ghostly Vertical feels really bad, and especially Caitlyn as like a reroll feels really bad. She just
Yeah.
doesn't have attack speed this set, and she just feels bad.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Caitlyn in this ideal 1200 damage to you from all the way over here sort of design always really more serves as this I'm going to save you 1 or 2 HP in the early game sort of tool that you would then hopefully drop if you can find the ghostly emblem that Rain and Z-Boy were talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like Kayn and Morgana are both very good units, I guess is all I would say.
Yeah.
They're both strong.
I agree with that too. I'm just saying like Ghostly Vertical specifically like just feels very bad. A lot of verticals this set feel very bad.
Okay. Is that because the unit quality isn't quite there across enough of them to make it worthwhile?
I played like 4 games of PvE. I'm not really one to talk about that specifically. I just know that from people who've been playing a lot more have been saying things like verticals this set in general just don't feel as good as they did in set 10. And it could be just because like most of the vertical traits aren't very good, or maybe reroll comps are gonna kind of come back in a way. Like I remember at the Toronto TFT there was someone who was playing Kha'Zix reroll and going like heavenly vertical, but because he hit Kha'Zix 1 at like level 4 or whatever, it just carried him throughout the entire game basically. Which like if you're hitting early, it's fine. It seems fine, but like if you're playing like a vertical ghostly, I've heard is bad or doesn't feel very good. Vertical heavenly, unless you're really strong early game, feels really bad. The only like one of the only verticals I've heard good things about has been Mythic, and like a lot of the 5-cost units this set are like a little too easy to hit 3 stars for as well as another thing, which is a totally different conversation, but yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, they nerfed 2 verticals with this most recent patch.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dragonlord was busted, so they needed to tune that down, and so was Reaper, because you either play for Kayn or Kindred, and that bleed at 60% was also broken. So bringing it down to 50%, we'll see. They might even bring it down to 40% by the time it goes live. If I'm being honest, it's very good.
42.
Yeah.
And Story Weaver also doesn't feel good late game, is another comment I've heard from people.
Okay. I watched KL3 shred boards as well.
That's fair.
Well, I guess to go back specifically to Ghostly.
Ghostly,
like,
yeah.
It feels like the way it was designed was either it's like a sort of a small buff you get which gives you like bonus damage. So like it's not, if you've got it like at 2, you're still getting like 12% bonus damage ideally on the unit that you're fighting against. But the idea is that if you're running a vertical, that you have so many specters that you have that you kind of overwhelm people, and if you have a strong early round, you kill some units, they start to really stack up on people that will work. But
Well, you also have like Morgana and Kayn that both have AoE effects in their kit. So those Spectre damage, like that Spectre damage gets amplified even more so on top of those.
Nice.
So I mean, I actually like this is the thing that I'm just looking at our sheet right now, right? Like every single one of these ghostly units, and with Aatrox included in that, all have a +1 trait for 2 traits, right? So Caitlyn 2 snipers, Shen 2 behemoth, Alawi 2 warden, Kayn 2 reaper, Sage from Morgana 2. They're all very easy flex traits. And that allows you, like, the vertical on Ghostly looks good due to the fact that you can flex in 5 costs fairly easily. Wukong's a Sage. There's no Reaper, but Warden goes to Set. Shen gets not Urgot. What's his face? Udyr.
Udyr, yeah.
Right. So like everybody's pretty good. You can throw Caitlyn off. She's your early game carry. You use her to carry your items probably for like Kayn or something like that. Then transition off of her. But Aatrox as well can be an AP carry that you can transition those items off to Morgana as well. So I mean, I think these units are really good, like early game, and I think Morgana and Kayn are 2 of the best units in the set right now.
I think it's partially going to depend on how much you're able to capitalize on the Spectre damage. Like, as you're kind of saying, like, if Kayn is able to activate Reaper with Kindred or whatever other Reapers are in the set, you should be able to just stack so much bonus damage that Kayn just nukes you. Nothing
Yeah.
personnel kit, all that kind of crap.
Right.
But again, I think it's still in this sort of PBE. We're still trying to figure things out, gray area where unless you're playing in challenger level lobbies or master level lobbies, whatever, everything can feel awkward because you might be playing with folks that are of different skill levels. It's hard to gauge things in those kind of
Right.
lopsided lobbies.
No, I talked with Rambling quite a bit. Like on day 3, I want to say it was. And he had Kayn as his top unit going in. That's like not a 5 cost because all the 5 costs are pretty overtuned still at that point. And we're starting to bring those back down. But like all the 4 costs that were good got nerfed yesterday. So Ashe, Galio, Kayn. So like both Kayn and Morgana and Ghostly both got nerfed because they were overperforming on PBE.
All right.
We'll have a separate meeting about how we all gain LP later away from prying eyes. But,
I don't know how to gain LP. I don't play this game.
I don't either.
Video games. All
Yeah.
right.
Only.
So let's go on to Heavenly. I think probably what we'll do for today is try and get to the end of Umbral and then call it there, and just take this very piece by piece, because I know that these things can otherwise go on for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So Heavenly is Guild, so presumably all of the same stuff that applied to Guild previously would still apply. That they're intended to be very, very splashable, and you can play them vertically. Presumably, depending on how heavily tuned they are for that, is whether or not that's worthwhile.
Yeah. Shout out to Wukong, great Heavenly Sage. I still love that little detail so dang much. But yeah, there's really not too much else here. I feel like it's Guild. If you can find a easy way to slot in some of these units, it will be very effective. You can also see some pretty natural synergies showing up with Mythic as well, I believe, through the. Oh my goodness, Neeko isn't in this list either, so that's another unit.
I think we're missing one.
But because of that, you should have a couple of interesting options to work through as well.
Neeko is good.
Yeah, I like Neeko a lot.
This is one trait where I feel all the units on their own are actually good units. Like all of them have like solid abilities. You can play around a carry Soraka. You can play around a rerolled Neeko for your front line the entire game. Like, all these units just feel good, similar to how Guild felt. Even I guess minus Twitch, but like all those units felt very good on their own, right? And then once you start to add in the Guild traits, it just makes your whole board obviously stronger. They also have probably one of the better augments catered to them as well in the Heavenly reroll.
Oh, what's that one? I haven't seen that yet.
So you get, let me look it up so I actually have the exact words on it. But you get rerolls based on how many Heavenly units you have in play.
Basically, I think it's every stage you get X rerolls, and then you gain +1 for every 3-star Heavenly, I think.
Yes. And funnily enough, it works if you double up units on your board. So if you have 2 Kha'Zix, that counts.
Ooh.
Oh, really?
I don't know if that was I don't know if that was a bug, but that was happening on Saturday when Wajan Iverson was playing. When I was watching him play this and he was testing it, and yeah, he had extra Malphites or something he threw on the board, and it counted towards the extra rerolls. Again, I don't know if that's been patched. I haven't been looking at patch notes because I've been busy with work.
The way it's written, it does sound like you can do that because it's like a start of stage effect. Presumably, gaming with that system is much more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 4 free rerolls plus 1 for each of your heavenly champions, but you get it once per stage only. But it also gives you 2 heavenly units too.
Yeah, it's at the beginning of the stage, so it's very easy to swap out your units for extra heavenly units that you have maybe on your bench for the PvE round, and then just swap them back after you have your rolls.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, it doesn't say unique, so it definitely doesn't need to be unique ones. That's pretty sick. Divine rerolls.
I like it a lot, but it also sounds like something that Riot would not like. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but,
I feel like that's gonna get patched. Probably not right away, but eventually.
I mean, if it stays, like I'm all for it. Like, there are interesting places where you can sort of work around how systems work and stuff. But the tricky part of game design is always figuring out if something is a fun little optimization or if it's just a chore. And I feel like going, oh, it's the PvE round, let me throw in my excess heavily units on bench. I feel like that can be more of a chore than fun.
I don't know.
You know, we'll see.
Like, I don't think it's that. Considering you're getting, I think people might feel that they're getting away with something by doing it, and if that was by the design in the first place, then maybe it will stay that way.
Maybe.
So in terms of like the overall tags in the traits, like yeah, we mentioned that the Nico is like the one that draws a lot of the stuff together. But anything else in terms of trait tags that everyone wants to flag?
I think we caught everything there.
I already said Great Heavenly Sage is cool, so you know.
Yeah. I will say Soraka, like for people that don't know about that unit, she is very strong. Like her ability to silence, or like I guess it's not a silence, but it's a mana reave. I think of silence because that's what it is in League. But yeah, it's a mana reave in this, which resets obviously people's ultimates and stuff. Really can swing fights for you. I think she's one of the more exciting units for casters to get to enjoy talking about. Just a strong unit overall that just doesn't get enough attention because Ultruist isn't something that a lot of people are like looking at right now. I don't think.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. Oh, sorry, Quinn.
I was just gonna say I played Soraka carry and it was strong. My other augments weren't the best choices because I was just messing around with new stuff on the PvE. Woo. But Soraka as a unit itself felt very strong.
I think that was where we ended up, and I guess you can roll back the tape and keep me honest when I say this, but I think that's where Counterfeit and I ended up talking about Altruist earlier on, where Altruist feels really kind of weird and a little bit meta dependent of are you running against compositions that have a lot of backline access? Cool. Maybe you want to throw in Altruist to try to counteract that a little bit. But Soraka individually does feel pretty strong, and I've seen some people mess around with, as Quinn, you even said, like trying to turn her into a carry beyond just the mana reave, which is an immensely powerful utility tool.
The one thing which I think is, which we haven't talked about as of yet, is I don't really like this design from Heavenly, is that you've got the whole thing that the trait bonus is not just based on the vertical, but based on the star level of the units, which seems like it's kind of trying to tempt you to try and run some of the lower cost rerolls. So if you look at the cost scaling on the trait, it's like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 5. So presumably if you are going anywhere near the vertical, you're doing a lot of that relatively early on.
Yeah. I think that's why the augment is built the way it is too, because that's kind of putting you on to that carry style of Heavenly. So they want you to reroll, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you 3-star him, that bonus just goes to the 3-star unit, right? It doesn't get applied to your team?
Uh,
I think it's applied to your team.
yeah,
Let
I
me
think
read the
it. I
trait
think
again.
it is. Like, but I don't know if we're gonna be able to find that out.
Okay, so unfortunately for me, the tooltip that they have in the team planner is not exactly the same as the
Oh,
tooltip they have in game. So the tooltip in game actually says the exact how the scaling works. It doesn't say it in the team planner tooltip.
I think if I remember
Okay, I
correctly,
see it.
the Heavenly Vertical game that Wajan Iverson played was broadcast on Toronto TFT. I could find the
Okay.
game later when I get home and see if there's any like thing like that going on where if I can find it out by watching it.
It is the whole team. It's 2 stars
Oh, it
Grant,
is.
30% more. 3-star Grant's 50% more.
Well,
That
that's
makes sense.
it's another interesting way to think about it too. Then where you don't have to play deep into the Heavenly Vertical to gain the specific bonus that you want. You could just splash it in with 2 and say, okay, cool, I'm just going to also roll Nico and Kiana for this 2-cost AD comp I'm running. And if I just hit those 2 3-starred, everyone will get a lot of HP and AD, and things just work out fine, right?
Right.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting point. I hadn't really thought of that because I just assumed that it would. I guess it's like theoretically, if you can like get the star bonus and also the heavenly bonus, that's going to be good. But
Yeah.
maybe it's not as good as just having better units. Because
You're always probably going to try to have 2 stars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
excuse me, my dog is going bark 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 bark.
No worries.
That's okay.
Oh, sorry, that's the sound of making an upset sound. Okay, but cool. Yeah, so it sounds. Excuse me, madam. So it sounds like there's some interesting stuff to look out for in Heavenly in terms of how that there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how people approach it. You said it.
Cutie puppy.
Very grumbly.
A lot of these traits are very like build your own trait feeling, and I kind of like that.
I do too, but then we get back to the dread that I felt when Innovators came out, or whatever the trait was in set 6, where it was saying, which one was the one where you get to build each cost level, like you pick a cause and effect?
Admin.
Admin, yeah.
Thank you. Like, I feel the same chill that ran up my spine when admin was first revealed, where I go, oh, this is so fantastic from a player perspective, and I am not excited to talk about it as a commentator whatsoever, because it's gonna be so hard to determine what all
Yeah,
these different states are for all these different players. Like,
yeah,
some of them
that
here
makes
I feel
sense.
like are a little bit more straightforward. Like, Ink Shadow applies to everyone, so you just have to track that here and there. Faded, I'm a little bit worried about, but you can see that pretty easily at a glance too, so I think we'll be fine. But we'll see how it goes. I think they've learned a lot of lessons from admin in terms of visibility.
I think it's just a matter of remembering everything as opposed to being able to see it. Because sure, you could see what faded units are tied together, but it's remembering what those bonuses those units are giving. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't mean to go
No,
off track here.
that's totally
Ink
fine.
Shadow time.
No, I
I think
definitely
that's a pretty good transition, yeah.
I was just copying the Ink Shadow tattoos in here, but okay, yes. So we've got a relatively straightforward, like the trait itself is very straightforward in terms of what it's actually doing for the units. So, it only applies to Ink Shadow champions. I guess they're probably going to change these numbers around because they're different from 2 different sites here. But like, yeah, small amount of bonus damage and damage reduction. So apply a useful bonus for frontliners and backliners. I guess, and both of those are useful for melee carries, like Udyr. And then the rest of it is just the tattoos, which don't need to be applied to Ink Shadow units to work.
It's return of Zon, I would say, but a little bit more splashable
Flexible.
than Zon, yeah. The one thing I do want to note, though, and this sort of skips ahead to the traits at the very end, but I feel like it's a very upfront thing for Ink Shadow, which is there is no internal synergies here whatsoever aside from Ink Shadow. So if you want to play the vertical, you're not going to really find too many interesting off ramps for yourself. Like, granted, you can find like 2 Bruiser, 2 Behemoth. I've seen pretty nutty things that Kaisa can do in trick shot compositions as well. But I feel like this is going to be one of those traits where you look to see what the first level of item is. You go, cool. I'm going to maybe splash that in for this other wider composition I want to run than truly playing this vertically.
Oh, I suppose that's the other thing as well. You're talking about like improvements to this is that I believe for this you've got it all in the tooltip from the beginning of the game. So I assume that from a broadcast point of view, even like the most basic of broadcasts could like just look and see what that is and include that in some sort of pop out.
Yeah, because you really only need one Ink Shadow unit to see what your items are going to be for the whole game, and if you decide you don't like it, then you can just not play it.
I'm assuming, does everyone get the same Ink Shadow
Yes.
tattoos?
I believe so.
No.
Oh, no? Really?
No.
Oh, that makes things more confusing.
I'm sorry,
yeah,
I'm putting
you can get
false
different
information on the internet.
No, you're good.
Two
You're good.
different-
I've seen it a few times now.
I've seen it. That was when words are hard. When PBE came out and I was watching people play games, that was one thing I was curious about. Like, first question in my head was that for Ink Shadow, and 2 players that game had gone Ink Shadow, and I saw, oh, they have different tattoos.
Okay,
So.
that makes life a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder why they did that then.
I mean, I think the reason why you don't do that is so that way, again, Ink Shadow doesn't have a direct path, right? Because there is no internal synergies and such like that. I think that's just to make sure that if 2 to 3 players all want to play Ink Shadow, they're not just going to like punch each other down and contest each other to hell. So I feel like it might be some kind of protection from that.
Yeah,
if I had to
that would
guess.
make sense. Oh, sorry, I spoke over something there. Ooh, maybe not.
No, I think you're good.
Yeah.
In terms of what the tattoos actually do, like they seem to be sort of, they're not like massively powerful from what I can see. Like they seem to be sort of roughly equivalent to just a regular item.
I thought there was one that really jumped out to me. Let me take a double check real quick.
There's definitely no shimmer scale. I'll say that much.
Right.
Yeah.
Shimmer scale,
which is a good thing. Good thing.
Oh, they're not.
I will
They're not
say
as powerful as
the,
Sigil Gods, yeah.
Yeah, like from like set 7 when now we have those items as literal, artifact items because they're so much.
I think a lot of these tattoos, kind of like with Zon, right? Like they're suited right to individual champions within the trait. Like the dash and stun is really good for Volibear, right? You want him like putting out that damage. You want him healing up. It just offers a lot for a big beefy sort of frontline bruiser like him. And so there's interactions like that where it's like, oh, okay, this is really good on this person, kind of like where you had with Zeri, right? You had certain things that were really good with Zeri, and you wanted them on her, and certain things that were better on Echo, and you wanted them on him. Is how I sort of see the trait, right? Like if you're going Ink Shadow, you're looking for specific items that are going to be, probably presumably better than others, but they're also sort of like tied into those units themselves.
I think
and giving a little direction of how to build around it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think the Tattoo of Force, which is that dash up and stun someone, is the only item that really jumped out to me as, oh wait, this seems really strong, because it's a free way to add bonus utility in a manner that TFT hasn't really explored in a while. like ZZ Rot has the taunt, of course, but like you're basically giving any unit you want a free stun. At least any frontline you if you're playing the item properly, I guess. Like
Yeah.
in theory, you could do some pretty wild and wacky stuff, but that is a lot to play around, and I think it sort of jumps out to me a bit more than a few of the other options here.
Yeah, and it's extremely good on you, Udyr, for
Yeah, that too.
like great on volley. Volley is a great item holder for Udyr. So if you get that, you can say like, wow, okay, like I've got an enormous amount. Like it just takes his already very good kit and makes it that much better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I like the Tattoo of Fury as well. Like, that's the one which is bonus like execute damage and Yoni Dog, 40% attack speed when you get a takedown. Like that seems like that's pretty solid.
I mean, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, like introducing free items just means that you have the capability to get one more unit triple itemized, and we've already seen like how crazy multiplicative that impact can have. So just even freeing up the item slot for one of these units in your Ink Shadow Regiment, or just in your board as a whole, right? Like that could also be a pretty big selling point.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of the set super fan.
Honestly, yeah, I didn't really think of that, but that's a pretty interesting way of mentioning it.
It's also worth noting that you can pop them off on the bench as well.
Yes.
Which feels like that makes it tremendously more playable, that you're not, having to ditch your units. But I imagine I think you're all right that it's something you'd want to play if you find something for a late game unit, and you probably would want to sell the early game units anyway. Cool. All right, Mythic. Let's talk about Mythic. In it. So, Warlord without having to win, just a bunch of. I mean, it's KDA. It's KDA.
It's KDA with less of a positioning puzzle, so it's better KDA. Honestly.
Yeah. Oh. So it's health, ability, power, and attack speed. I don't know. Like, sorry, I think it was Quinn. Was you saying that this was one of the ones you were thinking was actually good?
In terms of vertical, yeah, it like with emblem stuff, like I've seen when obviously the max cap out 10 mythic is nuts.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
It's nuts. It's unbeatable. It reminds me of what was the high cap out? Oh man, you had the
From what set?
2 sets ago. I want to say when Title won. The high cap out for geez, my brain is blanking right now. It'll come to me. I'll come back to it.
I'm gonna keep thinking on that too because it's gonna bug me.
Like David Oss was the one that figured it out, but it was man, yeah. Now I gotta look.
Ace.
So that's
David Ace.
Yes, David Ace. Thank you.
Yeah, so 2 emblems to get there.
Yeah, it will take 2
believable. A mythic is craftable, right? I think it's like tier.
Yeah. Yes, and yes.
2 emblems together.
Hello.
Hey, Twiggy.
Hey,
we're
Twiggy.
fairly close to the end of this, but I'll post it up afterwards to be able to watch back through it. And the sheet is linked, so you can sort of see I've been just noting down what's being said.
It was Demacia. That's what I was thinking.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
Demacia. That's kind of what vertical mythic reminds me of. Like if you can get there, you're winning.
Sure.
It's
And I mean, like,
Exodia.
I think they've done really well, just as a small tangent, in terms of like those big chase traits, making them like hard to get to, but also really good,
Right.
Like they did a good job with like Pentakill, and stuff like that, where you have to like really reach for it. But when you do, you're like, I'm locked in. Like this is the freest first.
Oh yeah, I'm looking missing some units here on Mythic as well. It's a Kog'Maw and Cho'Gath. I'll see. Oh, there's anywhere else. Okay, but yeah, let's see. So Cho'Gath is, I assume, Behemoth.
Yes.
Yeah, and Kog'Maw. I think Kog'Maw's got some interesting tags as well, right?
Yeah, Kog'Maw's an Invoker, which it's still weird to me to put my head together, honestly. Like low mana cost Invoker, but easy enough to splash, synergizes with the Lilia late automatically. It's pretty nice.
Oh yeah, a good shout on the internal Invoker synergy. I think it doesn't have. Yeah, we've got Bruiser in here from Tahm Kench. Nico, no direct stuff, but still is built defensively, and BMS as well. So it looks like there's actually a pretty good spread out of traits across the whole line for Mythic as well.
Yeah, I feel like Mythic is another interesting thing that they've done is create traits where you can reroll, right? You can reroll Kog'Maw, Caitlyn, or you can go for the big sort of vertical, right, where you're just throwing in as many of these units as you can and pushing levels to get to that like those big breakpoints. And I think Mythic is one of those. It can work really well if you're re-rolling. It can work really well if you're going into the late game, with like, level 8, level 9 boards, stuff like that. It's just very flexible at all stages of the game.
I guess if we're sort of thinking backwards with Mythic, you would think that like the way the effect is set up, that you need to have them in for 4 combats before they get their full version, is that presumably it's intended to discourage you from dipping into it later on. In that you've got 4 rounds where you're not getting the full effect of the bonus versus something you could get immediately.
Sure, but I mean, like you're still getting some bonus. It's just not the full effect, right? And certainly, if you hit like a Lilia on 5 or something like that, which happens from time to time, that gives you or if you have a lot of AP items and Mythic Opener or whatever, right? Like you play Wandering Trainers, like there's like I'm not putting a unit on my board because it's not getting the full value yet. I have to put it on my board to get it to the full value.
But I guess you're more inclined, or you're much more inclined if you do find them early, because I think because quite a lot of them are relatively low cost.
It's also important to remember too, like these stacks also happen on the PvE rounds as well, so that's a free stack too if you're just trying to get to that ultimate level.
Incorrect. They don't apply on PvE rounds. It's no, it's after player combats.
After player combat. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm just misinformation.
No, you're good. Sorry if that came across either.
No,
like,
I never think
Wrong.
that you're a terrible person.
Wrong. Yeah. Wrong. Next cast is Pro Droid. Wrong.
Wrong.
There are ways that you can build up a good rapport on a desk. That is not one of them, friends.
That's what we're going to be doing on Saturday.
Yes.
Even if you're right, I'm just going to be like, wrong.
Yeah.
Especially if you're right. Just for gaslight you the entire way through.
Oh.
Wrong.
Counterfeit. Gaslight special. Got it.
It's my
dealing
specialty.
with for the past, 5-something years, Counterfeit? Like, how dare you?
How very dare I? Yeah, I mean, in terms of for Mythic, it looks like the overall like unit quality is pretty good. Like, yeah, as you said, like everyone loves Nico. Like Tahm Kench seems solid.
Even Kog'Maw's fine.
Yeah.
I guess it is. Yeah, so it is I suppose just like trying to sort of point out more stuff about it. It is a very AP centric comp. I guess the closest Bard's, I think the only one who has any AD scaling at all.
Right.
And even then, Bard is like, they advertise him as this mixed damage dealer, can do both, but I don't see how it's not really AD, as you're kind of saying.
Yeah.
I suppose that's where it's different from KDA, isn't it? That the bonus is, I think, because it looks like the bonus, when you see it written down, it looks like it's a attack damage, but it's not. It's just AP and attack speed.
Yeah, so more casting, obviously. But like Bard is better with more attack speed, essentially, because you want to build a Rage Blade on him.
Yeah. on top of that too, like this goes back to this. I forget the set that really brought this to prominence, but these units that are capable of double dipping, right? Being able to play both a little bit in AD and a little bit in AP, and their trait gives them both.
Hmm.
They can
Mhm.
just get so inherently strong off of certain items, certain builds, certain like verticals, all that kind of stuff. Like throwing Mythic in for Bard, awesome. Every trait, unlike other units that only really like use the AD or AP individually, Bard uses both to pretty decent effect.
Mhm.
So it works together pretty nicely.
I was checking his ability, and it looks like he actually deals both types of damage rather than it being
Yes.
that you've got scaling on both. Like, but it sort of funnels into one number. It's literally like two separate numbers with two separate scalings, which is, I think, pretty unusual.
I think the way that it works specifically is that you have the meat fly out. The meat deals AP damage, and the auto attack from the bard just deals enhanced AD. Maybe
Yeah, that's
no one's
probably how
shouting
it
wrong
works.
again. We're good.
Oh, I'm saving that for Saturday.
Wrong.
Thank you.
We're a very supportive group.
Uh,
But yeah, so I guess that's like I certainly hadn't fully clocked that the mythic stuff was very AP coded. In like
So
abilities.
I'm looking at it, and it's definitely a higher side. Like you get a higher payoff on physical damage at a 65, 65, 70, where the magical damage is 24, 36, 60. And the magic damage only does apply to those meeps. So yeah, you're 100% on that.
yay.
Good job.
Wrong.
All right.
Wrong.
You can be both things.
It's the only thing I'm going to hear for the next.
When did we begin?
Honestly, I
Ash.
don't know when it stopped hearing it, so whatever. It's just my life now.
Oh no. All right, porcelain.
Yes.
This is an interesting augment like setup. So yeah, so you only get the effect on cast, attack speed, and less damage, or damage reduction. Like it does feel like some of the traits in this one are in this set are quite straightforward in terms of what you're getting out of it. Like there's been a few so far I think that have just been like, here's something that's useful for front lines, here's something that's useful for back lines, and we're done.
I think that unit complexity is the difference in this set, where like this time traits are pretty straightforward in what they're doing for you, but the units themselves do a lot more than I feel they did in the last set, at least in comparison.
That builds into this idea of like more things being splashable too, right? Like where
Mhm.
cool, Arcanist is giving you 20 to 100 and something AP depending on how deep you invest, but yeah, Syndra has this stacking infinite cast, right? Like that's kind of the more exciting, engaging part of it.
Right.
Yeah, I can dig it.
But like all your legendary units do like multiple things. Like Hwei obviously offers you the bench slot. Plus that, like Lysandra here in Porcelain, she can make you items, which it's really cool that we're starting to get like more of these high tier units, Lysandra, Kiana, that offer extra components. But also, if you high roll those early, it kind of does put you in this position that you can really snowball. And I feel that in TFT, we do try to draw back a bit from the snowballing effect, but at the same time, it's hard just because, like, all right, well, if this unit's really good, everybody's obviously playing it, so that makes it harder to hit. But if I'm the first one to it, am I the person that's going to guarantee like a top 3 in this lobby because of that?
I mean, the only other thing that I'm kind of thinking of about Porcelain, just more specifically, is that it's one. I believe this is craftable as an emblem, right? Like this
It
isn't
is.
one of the uncraftable ones. It's like there's a lot of easy ways to apply those. Just generally, as you said, like good frontline, good backline to whoever you want to. Like
Mhm.
I've had some success with throwing it on Tom Kench just to have extra damage resistance on a very tanky utility defensive unit.
Right.
But also, I can see a world where you throw this on another sniper to further capitalize on Ash's abilities, or you maybe even just say, "Screw it! I just want to get as much buffed up here for Lissandra as possible because attack speed equals mana generation.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that she's able to turn as many folks into teapots as possible.
Did anybody catch the Diana situation that was going on with Porcelain before they
Mhm.
fixed it?
I did
No.
not know.
So Diana holding a Porcelain spat before, I think not this most recent patch, but the patch prior is when they fixed it. It was like right after a Toronto TFT event. She wasn't mana locked. Like her design didn't have her mana locked. So she
Oh,
was
right.
casting
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
infinite and never dying. Like she was just broken.
I did not know about this. I will have to look up a YouTube video or something to find an example of that because that
Yeah,
sounds
she was
hilarious.
unkillable. Like actually just
Amazing.
unkillable. Just was always reduced damage, always doing stuff, never dying. It was crazy.
Yeah, I gotta
they
find
fixed
that.
it.
That's interesting.
Yes, good job, PB friends.
Yeah.
In terms of like what's in the trait, like you've got quite a shallow like trait here with it being like 4 units, and it feels like the unit quality is generally pretty damn good. Like you just mentioned, Lissandra's strong, Ash at least currently is strong, Amumu like is very good, and only Lux is really there as a potential like dead weight unit.
Lux got nerfed multiple times because she was too good. So they've made it to where she's more of a throw-in unit now, more of like a trait or like an early carry for your vertical Arcanist. This is the comp that I've played the most, so like I'm the most excited to talk about Porcelain. But Lux was like premier, very good even at 2-star. They nerfed a lot of her damage, scaled her back quite a bit to make her more, like I said, more like a trait bot, and to offer that early Porcelain 2, get that Arcanist going. Because you also get a lot of synergies with Lissandra to Syndra, with also having that Amumu and the Warden effect with Set. So like you get these late game boards with this trait specifically that are very, very strong. And same goes with Ash as well, with gaining that extra, like getting to 4 Porcelain with Ash and having that 30 or that 60% attack speed makes her so strong, especially into the late game because attack speed is just crazy on her.
Yeah, I remember the like readings that they changed that at some point. I think previously like a Quincy's wasn't good on her, but now it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think like first couple days Quincy's was pretty bad, and Ash in general was kind of meh. But as they've started to tune her up a little bit and make it to more where like they want that attack speed, it makes sense, right? To want to like get vertical and play this Ash. Whereas before you were like, why am I adding extra Porcelain units instead of just trying to go like vertical snipers to just add in more damage? But now that you have that more effect, it's interesting, right? Like I think it's the main thing for Ash for me is that when she has those higher scales of attack speed, she's literally just burning through frontliners, and she kind of stays on the same line that she's attacking in from what I've noticed with her targeting. So like she'll go past a frontliner if they're too far left or right from how she's targeting, and she'll just start nuking backliners because of being a sniper.
Okay, nice. Yeah, no, I do like it. Like it feels like Porcelain is one of those ones that gives you, particularly the 4, gives you quite a lot of bang for your buck. Okay, 2 more left before we call it a day, because gosh, just even trying to make this short, it's still running really long. So
yeah, rapid fire, let's go.
All right, so Story Weaver. Again, maybe maybe this is like the overall narrative we've got around the traits, as I said before, like that the actual effect on the units is pretty minimal, just a little bit of extra health across the squad, like very little health across the squad. But you're mostly playing it for the KL, and you've got, this is another thing we're going to need to memorize all of the potential routes that KL can be built in.
Right.
I feel like this is easier to check at a glance though, because it becomes, ooh, is this utility damage or defensive kill, right?
Yes, I guess people are probably going to pick like one flavor and just choose those options from there.
Yeah, because it's sort of the same problem with like Sona in this past set, right? Where every time that players are presented a series of options, there's so much data out there and so many experiences that a lot of the time folks are just going to say, okay, I think this is just the best one. In most cases, I'm going to try to go for that. Where I think the one that I've seen folks talking about, if you really want to go deep into Storyweaver as a vertical, is the Res just generally, because that's incredibly strong, but I can see worlds where you just go straight damage on Kale and you just try to prioritize your items towards defensive options in your front line to stall for her.
Yeah.
I haven't messed with the story weavers very much yet. Where's the revive one come in? Is that just one of the things you can do?
I think that's is that 3 or is that 2?
That is a tier 3 ability, yeah.
Okay, that is 3,
so
right?
7
Yeah.
story weaver.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so the one that people could conceivably play.
They tuned it back a bit, so I don't know if it's as broken as it was when like it was getting picked a lot, but I think it's still pretty good. I don't think it's bad per any means. I think that this is like Hale's in a spot where Sona wasn't, where like there's not just like a clear cut like this is the best, as you were saying, Protroid. I think it's very much a situational thing.
Mhm.
Like if you don't have items, right? Like you can get like a free item out of her with her first effect, for the supportive effect being either like a Zeke's Herald for 2 units and herself, or a Shred/Sunder item built into her. So like, oh, I don't have access to a Static Shiv or an Ionic Spark or a Blast Whisper or an Even Shroud. So now I'll just run that on my Kale for now until I do, and then you drop out a Story Weaver or you just keep it in, So I think it's just a very flexible effect that you can kind of have in your early to mid game, and then you might switch out of it into the late game as you get more access to items.
I like that.
All right.
Yeah, I do like the idea of that being a thing that's happened. Small note on they've got the internal synergy of the 2 bruisers and the plus HP from the Story Weaver. So like, I guess there is a world where the Kale's more of the utility piece in a bruiser composition.
Yeah.
Presumably.
Like I primarily have been playing Story Weaver with Kaisa and going trick shot.
Okay.
Story Weaver essentially.
That's
been like my main use for it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If there's nothing more to say about them, then let's go to the last one for today, which would be Umbral.
Umbral.
So that's our KDA for this one, I guess. A little bit more straightforward.
More like
this
Dumbrel, am I right?
Shield plus execute, kind of cool.
There's also the positioning puzzle too, as you're getting at, Peter, where it's kind of annoying for lack of a better term, but they also even say as you go deeper and deeper in, you sort of ignore that less and less, ignore that more and more, excuse me, I should say. The execute's fun. I think it works nicely with all of these units, except maybe, I haven't played enough around with Silas. I've been trying to figure out if there's a blue buff triangle between him, Syndra, and one other unit, but so far I haven't had too much success with that. But
Yeah, but with Silas, I was looking at that. I was like, I don't know how much his AP's healing AP scaling is. I think it's okay, but I think if he's not got a lot of AP behind him, I don't think he actually heals that much.
He does not. He needs help.
Yeah, he's definitely more of a carry, from what I've been seeing in the higher ELO games. You like want a Bloodthirster on him as like one of his better items, keeps him kind of going. You kind of almost build him like you build most bruisers, in the effect of like Titans, Bloodthirster +1.
Okay.
But like I think in the bruiser comp, if you wanted to go like vertical bruisers, he's definitely one of those carry units for you. Him and Riven are the ones that kind of stand out the most for me.
In terms of like the mechanics of Umbral, I think the thing which I think I missed when I first read through it was that the shields apply to your allies, the execute does not.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
That definitely caught me off guard the first time I played, and I was like, oh, why is this not happening?
Right. Yeah, same. It's almost like a word, like you kind of read it quickly. You're like, oh, okay, shields and execute. And you're like, oh, wait, does that only apply? Oh, so Umbral has to be on these to actually be a more viable unit for what they can do.
Admittedly, I read it as the opposite, where I was looking at this like, oh, okay, so the shield and execute are both exclusive to Umbral units, so
Mm,
there's no point in me trying to position any of my other units in the Umbral hex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's
And
kind of interesting,
I
like the early units being like Darius and Yorick, like those are very tanky units, rather than like damage dealing units. So presumably by the time, or a lot of the time, by the time you've got low health enemies, they're going to be close to dead and or dead. From the early units, like with the Darius and Yorick being the only early Umbrals, like that you have to wait until 3 and 4 costs to actually get any kind of significant damage dealers in there who might survive to the end of the fight.
I think
Yeah.
close to dead or dead is a hell of a pie chart that you just painted for us, for the record.
I mean, assuming that everybody like takes damage at roughly the same rate, like with the Darius and Yorick, that a lot of the time they will just be gone. If you, okay, I'm talking about if you just try and splash Umbral in.
No, I agree. I just thought it was a funny little thing.
Yeah, the like Darius is definitely, an okay carry early on. You can throw obviously like I was saying, like those bruiser items there, transfer them later. Kind of build him out to like be your Reaper. That's where his primary like kind of build out is in my mind from seeing him. I think these units are some of the cooler units in the set in terms of kind of like how they interact with things. Like Yorick's ability is really, really cool. How he kind of just stands there and tanks damage while sucking the life out of his enemies. That's pretty neat. Obviously, Set has probably my favorite mechanic in the entire set with him literally squatting people.
It is so much fun to look at, my god.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've not seen 8 Umbral yet. I'm still wondering if that's more of a win more than it is like really anything bigger than that, right? I guess like the 40% health execute is pretty nuts though. Kind of missed that part. I thought it just said execute enemies have a 100% chance to drop loot, but 40% health execute, that's not very much health that they need to take off to kill those units.
I have messed around with this, so you need 3 emblems to get there.
Ouch.
So, yeah, it's
You two, right? Because they
very
have 6 units.
no, well, you don't have the headliner anymore, so
Alun,
just-
Darius, Set, Silas, Yona, Yorick, 6. So you would need 2 to get to 8.
it's 9.
Is it 9?
Yep.
Hold on, I'm looking at the thing.
Oh, because MOBA Analytics has it at 8 right now. It's 9? Okay.
It is 9 now, yeah.
That's crazy.
Mobilix only has the data from
the original?
the original launch. It doesn't
Okay.
reflect
So it must have been too good. Yeah, you're right. Needing 3 emblems seems even more so of like Exodia-esque. Yeah, that's a crazy amount.
Remember, kids, whenever you launch into TFT and you have the option, pick Wandering Trainers, so that way everyone has access to bonus emblems.
Oh god.
Yeah,
RNG, the video
I get
game.
the impression that it does feel like it's one of those things that to have 3 emblems is so unreasonable that it's almost functionally deleted from the game. If presumably it was too easy to get and they're just won games before.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, like I said, 40%. You don't have to take too much off to just watch people fall over. Yeah, Umbral's cool.
Yeah.
Alun might be one of my favorite units too. I like how her ability interacts with things. I still have yet to see how like invokers can do a whole lot, but I do like how Alun can just kind of be like an early game carry for you in terms of AP. Her double esque ability where it offers your biggest line of units the attack speed, but also shreds an entire line of units for the enemy board. She offers a lot of utility and does some pretty surprising damage. She's definitely been a standout unit for me.
So the execute, my goodness. Because she's an Umbral unit, that gives her the opportunity to give an AoE execute.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Because she's just the Zyra reprint, really. But
oh yeah, I forgot that's very similar to how Zyra worked. Yeah,
I do like that
She
she
would
doesn't
hit the
actually
lines
stun
like
the back lines, so it feels like it's slightly more fair that you've got more. If you've got some, like Protro mentioned before, having some sort of healing for the back line means that there is some counterplay to it. You're not just he doesn't just temporarily delete your backline.
Yeah. These are, is Alun and Set the two units that have the best ability to get to backlines? I guess there's also Udyr, but yeah, I think Umbral has two of the best units that actually go straight to backlines, even with Yone as well, can dash back there. So it has a lot of access to backlines in its units.
No, that's a really good shout. Yone.
Obviously, with our lack of assassins now, getting to backlines isn't always the easiest. But yeah, like Set can get back there just from his first cast and how he goes to the backline usually with it. Alun obviously targets the biggest line, which I feel early game she's targeting backlines, and then late game she's starting to target front lines more often just because more units towards the front of the board.
Yes, because it's based on the HP pool, not rather than number of units. So
Right.
yeah, I like that. That's a really good shout on the backline access stuff. Cool. All right, that brings us to the end of, I believe that's Origins, that we've just gone through. Nice. We've kept it exactly on 1 hour 30, which is 30 minutes longer than I was hoping it would be. But hey, what can you do?
Just cut out our yapping.
I'm not going to do any editing.
You dare cut out our sweet content?
All right.
Don't worry, I said
okay,
the same
so
thing.
I'm going to call it there. Hopefully, at some point next week, we can come back to this again and just go through and do all the stuff. It's been really useful. Thank you for people who came along, even temporarily, to throw stuff in. Yeah, hopefully we can build on this next time, and it will be a useful resource for other people. For now, then, I'm going to close out the recording. Yeah.